The Canadian government is failing the world, not only Canada. We have a sanctions problem that is propping up Russia at the expense of Canada, Canadians, and our allies all across the world. Our government incompetence based around ideology is literally having a global impact on the overall shipping markets, the oil market, and I think we have an ethical duty to change the way that it is currently set up. Our government needs to step up and do the right things. Today, we have a really interesting video breaking down what is going on right now, how we are dropping the ball. But before we get into that, the Axe the Tax store is live. Click the link down below. Get yourself a shirt, a hat, a mug, anything as long as you can afford it. It is about having the conversation, keeping the message alive. Now let's get into today's video.
On this graph, you see the price of two different types of crude oil. Urals oil in red is the Russian stuff. Brent oil in blue is the global benchmark. You see how they track almost identically. But look what happened when Russia invaded Ukraine about 2 years ago. The price split. Worries about Russian supply and geopolitical instability sent each price in opposite directions. The price of Russian crude plummeted. And this big gap would eventually form the foundation of a novel idea to hamper Russia's war effort by hitting it where it really hurts.
Because Western allies have agreed to put a cap on the price of Russian oil.
This is the story of the Western attempt to cripple Russia's oil industry. And
Keyword is attempt because we have heard rumors for a while now that Russia was getting around these sanctions. We are getting into the details of it now. It's finally laid out because what is happening is not good.
how Russia may actually have emerged stronger for it. The first thing to know is that Russia is one of the biggest oil producers on the planet. It extracts and sells about 11% of the world's supply.
Russia is doing 11% matching with Saudi Arabia. We should be second place. We have the capacity to majorly increase our oil production. Not only that, we could set up refineries. We could actually be producing and productive when it comes to our natural resource of oil, which we have. Look at the two countries that are above us. Those are not generally countries that people think are overly ethical or want to support. They are getting all of the oil money, not all of it. Obviously, America gets a lot of it. But think about that. We know that the majority of those countries' wealth is based off of their oil production. That's only 5% more than we currently have. Imagine the impact to Canada if we were able to double our production. Obviously, that would not happen overnight. But if we had a forward-thinking or a realistic government, we could.
Putting it effectively on par with Saudi Arabia and really only behind the United States. Last year, it produced almost 10 million barrels of crude oil a day. That is its single most important source of revenue. And that money buys missiles, tanks, drones, guns, and ammunition. Hit Russian oil, and you hit Russia right in the gut.
That could literally be money coming to Canada, and instead it's buying missiles.
Talking about income of about $500 million every day for Russia in hard currency.
If you wanted to weaken Russia's economy, you really had one target, and it was oil.
But the world also gets nervous about clamping down on Russian oil. Because if we all just decided to choke off the supply, refuse to buy it, you would certainly hurt their bottom line. But less oil in the marketplace means higher energy prices for everyone.
Unless some other country steps up.
$3.79.
That's almost $1 more.
Thanks, Putin.
The aim was
Don't blame Putin, blame your government.
to keep Russian oil flowing so there wouldn't be any price shocks like there were with natural gas, but also to reduce income to the Kremlin.
So enter the idea of a price cap. A plan was hatched about 1.5 years ago to impose a limit on how much Russia could charge for its seaborne crude oil, $60 a barrel. That was about $24 under the market average. So they'd be selling at almost a 30% discount. And the goal was to walk this fine line where you cut meaningfully into Russia's oil revenue and its ability to fuel its war effort in Ukraine, but don't cut deeply enough that oil actually stops being profitable for Russia. The world still very much needs Russian oil. The West just wanted to shrink its margins.
That is so unbelievably naive. You know, we're talking tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars by the time it's all said and done. You think they're not going to find a way?
Now, you might be asking, why would Russia agree to that? Like, can't Russia sell its oil for whatever it wants to charge? And surely someone will buy it. Well, yes, except for one thing. For decades, Russia has relied on Western shipping infrastructure to move oil on a global scale.
It's just easier to use the existing global shipping network because everybody uses it.
Greece, for example, has one of the world's largest merchant fleets. It's a major player in oil shipping. It agreed to the price cap. In fact, the entire G7 group of nations agreed to the price cap. Together, they're responsible
These guys all agreed to punish Russia. What a surprise.
for ensuring something like 90% of the world's ocean-going trade. And that's important because, just to give you an example, if you want to sail through the Suez Canal, you need insurance. In a very meaningful way, Russian seaborne oil is financed by the West.
If Russia wanted to continue to use the shipping industry writ large, so ships that have insurance, ships that are registered, then it would have to sell that oil underneath the cap that was set by the Western nations.
So Russia could continue using registered shipping vehicles with insurance as long as it sold its oil at under $60 a barrel. If anyone was caught transporting Russian oil that cost more than that, they could be punished. But Russia found a way around it all.
Punished by who? Some international toothless organization that really is not going to be able to do anything?
Russia has spent many months and billions of dollars creating a so-called shadow fleet of oil tankers.
The hunt is on to buy up the rust buckets of the high seas for transporting Russia's oil.
Each year, there's a number of ships that go into scrap. They're scrapped because they're too old, and usually under normal circumstances, reputable oil companies would not even use them because they're too bad. However, those were the first.
Good thing we are paying the carbon tax here in Canada just so that we can punish Russia into using dilapidated ships that are wasteful, that are risky, that are polluting the oceans, but we're paying the carbon tax, so we're going to stop climate change.
First cheapest ships and the easiest ones to basically either buy or lease.
Think of it like a kind of parallel shipping network, but one where the ship owners, operators, registration, insurance, even locations at any given time are shrouded in mystery. And architects of the oil price cap don't like it.
We are aware that there is a parallel fleet. There's no denying that. And we know that it has also grown significantly, which is slightly unwelcome.
I want to show you something. So
listen to that language. How serious is that lady? She's the head of the UK sanctions division, and she's like, oh, it's slightly unwelcome. And I understand she has to use political language, but ethically, how much better would it be for Canada to be supplying that oil? The amount of money that we could put into our government from the oil would literally make up for Trudeau's crazy spending. Like, their ideology is holding us up so much that as a country, we are spending ourselves into oblivion, creating inflation, just destroying the country, and they won't support oil because they are if I can't see it, it's not a problem. Like, they bury their head in the sand and they're not realistic. Oil is being used, gas is being used all around the world. It's going to come from somewhere. We have, I think, the ethical duty to be supplying that oil.
Bloomberg has done some really outstanding journalism on this shadow fleet and how Russia uses it to sell oil on its terms, not the West's.
So we're here in the Gulf of Lakonikos. We've spent over 2 hours coming here by boat, and we're here to check out a hub of Russian oil trade.
So in this snippet, Bloomberg's documentary team is about to witness two ships meeting in international waters to spend a couple of days transferring oil from one ship to the other, except they check the GPS transponder signal on the ship receiving the oil, and digital tracking shows it floating 7 or so kilometers away, not at all where it actually is at that moment.
Somebody is doing something to make that ship appear somewhere else. This right here is the shadow fleet. You've got 2 tankers that the owners aren't clear. The insurance isn't clear in terms of the depth of the insurance. The flag is as bad as it gets. These are shadow fleet tankers.
And then they report there are more than a dozen similar vessels, part of the same fleet, floating nearby, either doing the exact same thing or getting ready to. The international
Unchecked, unregulated. There is nothing that they are doing which is going to be helping the environment. They are going to continue to supply oil through the illegal means. But no, don't worry, Canada. We'll just keep cutting our supply. We'll keep cutting our production because that's what's really good for the world.
International Maritime Organization that regulates shipping worldwide knows this is a problem. Canada, the United States, and Australia have all complained that more ships are illegally turning off their transponders, going dark, before transferring oil in international waters as a way of dodging sanctions.
Now they're able, even under tighter sanctions, to circumvent those sanctions and actually supply the markets that they want because these are their own vessels.
So oil leaves Russia at a declared price of no more than $60 a barrel using the West's shipping network. At some point, the oil might change hands. The paperwork, the logbooks get a little fuzzier, and by the time the oil reaches its destination, sanctions have gotten harder to enforce.
Hey guys, we want you to sell your oil for way cheaper than you should probably get. You're gonna listen to us, right? Please.
The actual sale price winds up being well above the price cap.
It's certainly more than the price cap. It's probably closer to $70, $75 a barrel. And that price will have its own sort of floating market depending on where the sort of set price of crude oil is going. But it's certainly, they're making a pile of money.
I don't think that a single cargo actually traded below price caps. So, it really
Not a single cargo. So keep in mind, Russia is getting basically unlimited money from this. There is zero environmental regulation. Canada is not making that money, which we could be doing good things with. You think that their production, you think that they aren't using, borderline slave labor to get that done? Of course they are. And especially when these international ships and how they get people onto these ships, they take their passports, they're like, you work for us now. It's this crazy dark underground world, and we haven't even got one cargo that has been the sanctioned price. Wow.
It has been pretty much a non-event, the price caps. Oil continues to move. Putin keeps making money, and we all pretend that we're doing something about it.
There are, according to some estimates, several hundred shadow fleet tankers in operation. Russia's economy is now poised to grow at a faster pace than any G7 nation.
No, Trudeau said Canada's #1. Yeah, right. Russia is printing money with this oil stuff. They are printing money because they do it unethically. Canada could be doing this. We could be putting the money back into the government again. Not that I want to do that, especially with Trudeau in charge.
That's because of oil. And who would buy Russian oil shrouded in this much secrecy?
You can see the amount of oil that shipped to Europe in the past 2 years, and it's really fallen off a cliff. And then you look at the amount of oil that has shipped to Asia, primarily India and China, and that's really gone through the roof. But once you start moving a significant amount of product outside of that system, we're blind to it. We have no idea, frankly, how much oil is being shipped, what people are paying for, where it's going, what it's being used for. And this poses all kinds of problems.
India's just been selling that oil back to Europe. So instead of us buying it directly from Russia, we're making it way less safe. We are making it way harder, way less environmentally friendly, and just buying it from India. And then they make money and then potentially scam us. I don't know.
Russia has undeniably been affected by the oil price cap. Even if Russia continues to make billions a year, it is charging less per barrel than it could otherwise. And consider how much it's had to spend circumventing the oil cap. Every dollar it spends on tankers, it's not spending on tanks.
We also know that the cost of creating and maintaining this infamous shadow fleet is around $2.25 billion in just 1 year.
Like, if you figure a single T-90 Russian tank costs somewhere around $5 million to replace, you can do the math. $2 billion could have bought 400 tanks. But consider
How much could all of that money coming from Canada saved if they couldn't buy all those tanks?
What this price cap has compelled Russia to do, it has effectively reshaped the shipping industry to its advantage.
We don't know who they are. We don't know what they do. Everything is gone under the radar.
And this is risky because what underpins almost every law we have about how to ship oil through international waters is the fact that if any of that oil spills, it is dangerous, it is damaging, it is very expensive to clean up. And the ships Russia has folded into its shadow fleet, they're often at the end of their lifespans.
They're elderly. They're over 15 years. Many of them are flagged in jurisdictions which have very low technical oversight or any sort of maintenance.
So if there's some kind of failure on board, a container leaks, oil spills, the owners, they're difficult to track. The accountability. Sometimes these ships are registered in countries that don't even border water.
So we're going to have anonymous oil spills while Russia continues to make money. This is why it's so backwards. And nobody is talking about this, how it is way worse for the world. It is absolutely a horrible thing for the world that Canada is not one of the top, number 2 oil producers in the world if we actually focused on it, if it became a national priority like it is for Russia, like it is for Saudi Arabia.
The insurance? Questionable, if it exists at all. One expert told us 80% of shadow fleet tankers have no known insurance.
It's just a matter of time before there's some major oil spill somewhere and nobody will be covering that cost of cleaning that up.
Experts we spoke to told us Russia's shadow fleet may very well be violating international law, whether it's laws governing ship registration, insurance, safety standards, or pollution safeguards. It's also becoming more deeply entrenched in the world oil economy. And if it turns out this shadow fleet is here to stay, it's hard to know how that story ultimately ends.
See, that's my actual biggest concern, is that this shadow fleet doesn't become a shadow fleet. It becomes the new infrastructure for how Russia operates. Russia, China, India, all of these countries working together. Obviously, you guys have probably heard of BRICS. These countries are just going to say, oh, sure, we do have the Western shipping lanes, but why don't we just use our own that have been the shadow ones? And all they need to start doing is just start agreeing with each other. They make a parallel competitor group that is not good for the world at large. But anyways, I am a real estate agent in London, Ontario. Reach out to me in the link below. We can hand select somebody to your area all the way across Canada if you want to work with me. Thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.